Welcome to the Campus Comics Cast, or as Zatanna might say, EMOCLEW et SUPMAC SCIMOC. This is episode 193, and my name is Tox Deer, and I'm joined by...
Ecom, and I didn't even try my last name.
I didn't either.
You coward.
And I'm Das.
Da.
All right. Well, in this episode, we're going to cover the first 5 appearances of Zatanna. Talk about what we've been reading, maybe hopefully do some trivia, CLZ Shake. But first, as we record this episode on September 10th, 2024, we learned today that John Cassaday passed away at the age of 52. Now, I was familiar with John Cassaday's work primarily through, he did like a 6-issue run on Captain America called The New Deal with Marvel Knights Captain America. And really probably the thing that stands out most to me was his run on Astonishing X-Men with Joss Whedon. So he is definitely a serious talent that is going to be missed by the industry. Mike, you got anything you want to add on John Cassaday?
Well, I don't know. I know the name, and I've probably read books where he was the artist. But I'd like to. I've had a goal for a while to read up on Planetary, starting from the very beginning, and I know he was one of the co-creators, I would say, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yes, he's listed as a co-creator for Planetary.
But I mean, just looking, I know him peripherally from looking at preview catalogs and Marvel previews, etc. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, what a shame, what a really sudden thing, because I mean, literally, he was put in the hospital just a few days ago, and he was gone within a week.
So, Shad, what about you? You have any familiarity with John Cassaday's work?
That's one that I have read, Astonishing X-Men, of course, like you had said, and then he did that first run of Star Wars with Jason Aaron, that first volume. I think the first 6 issues or so. So yeah, great artwork. Definitely will be missed in the industry.
So I thought this was a humorous story to share from Mark Waid, and Mark Waid's the other co-creator on Planetary, right? He's like the main force behind Planetary, or am I?
I don't think it was. I don't think. I thought it was Garth.
Okay, you got to fact check that.
Ennis.
Warren Ellis,
or not Garth Ennis, but Warren Ellis. Yeah.
That's right. Okay, all right. So anyway, disregard that. But this is from Mark Waid. Men in comics, as a general rule, are not exactly blessed with leading man looks, but John was. Ask anyone. Between his handsome appearance, his charming manner, and his perfect blend of confidence and humility, he was quite the favorite of many, many ladies in his youth. Many, effortlessly. To walk into a room of women with John was a reminder that the rest of us really, truly needed to work on our game. My single favorite memory with John was when he and I and a bunch of other comic dudes were standing around at a big convention bar party when actor Michael Rosenbaum walked in. Every woman's head turned instantly, every eye upon Rosenbaum. It was like throwing a magnet into a box of iron filings. Conversely, every man in the bar who'd been there with a date was suddenly holding 2 drinks. In the tumult, I had the presence of mind to look at John and say, "Now you know how we feel."
Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought that was funny. So, definitely a talent that's going to be missed. And his run on that, after he finished those first 6 issues of Captain America New Deal, I think he did covers for the next, 19 or so issues. He went up issue 25 on that series. I have one of them that's graded, just because it's such a striking cover. So yeah, definitely a talent that is going to be missed. So, all right. So moving on. So we are going to focus most of this episode on our first 5 for Zatanna. And of course, Mike, you want to give us a rundown of the first appearances of Zatanna for us?
Sure. I would love to be able to do that by heart, and I should be able to, but just to make sure I don't make the mistake, I'm going to look at my handy-dandy copy of the collected edition of Zatanna's Search. And it's technically 6 stories, and well, not technically, it is, and it's just that we we had a little confusion, didn't we,
Yes.
about whether the third or the second appearance actually was an appearance. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So the first appearance is in Hawkman
Hawkman.
#4 by Gardner Fox and the fantastic Murphy Anderson. The second appearance is in Detective Comics 336 by Gardner Fox, art by Bob Kane and Joe Giella. And then the third appearance is Adam #19 by Gardner Fox and Gil Kane and Sid Green. Then the fourth appearance is Green Lantern 42 by Fox, Kane, and Green again. And then we had Detective Comics 355, which had a backup story with Elongated Man by Fox and Carmine Infantino. And then lastly, Justice League of America #51 with Fox on writing, Mike Sikowski on pencils, and Sid Green on inks. And yeah, there's it was you seen that Fox scripted the whole thing and had some of the best pencilers of the Silver Age on these stories. So that's the 6 that we're going to talk about in this collected edition. The first 5 of which are the first 5 appearances of Zatanna. Tomato.
However, yeah, however you want to pronounce it. And now that we talked about how we were going to pronounce it, I've already forgotten what we decided on. Zatanna. Is that right?
I say
Zatanna, not Zatanna.
Right.
Zatanna.
I've said
Zatanna.
Zatanna
I don't
and
know.
Zatanna both. It's like Adam Strange being
yeah.
is he from Ran or Ron, and it just
Yeah.
I can't even keep myself straight. So whatever.
So, Shad,
Yeah.
I'll throw you on out there. What was your first introduction to the character of Zatanna?
This is hard for me because I don't actually remember. I have come across Zatanna, I'm sure, over the years, but this may be the first time I've actually read a full story or seen a full execution of a storyline. Was she in the Batman animated series? Probably. At some point in time.
I don't know. So I never really watched the animated.
I believe she was, yeah.
Okay. That's probably my first introduction then would have been a cartoon version of her for sure. But then I would say this is the first story that I really can recall where she's had it's been a long, full story of her and not just her popping up in a Swamp Thing book or something like that,
Mike, what about you?
Well, again, it's I'm not one of these people that can pinpoint first time reading someone or first comic I read or whatever, but I am pretty sure that the first time I read her was in Justice League of America #161, where she was inducted into the Justice League. And that led to a multi-part story, multi-issue story that went from 161 to, I want to say, 165 or something like that. So it was pretty long for its time. It was 165 was so about 5 issues that story arc covered, but it was her searching at the time for her mother Cindella, who lived, she was the daughter of Cindella and Giovanni, aka John Zatara. John being a human and Cindella being a member of the race, the fictional race called Homo Magi, or Magi. So it's. Did I lose you guys?
So she's had a hard time keeping a
No.
hold of her parents this entire time. She's had a rough time with keeping track of where they're at. Okay.
Sorry, my screen went to join call screen. I'm like, what the world did I?
No, you're
I
you're
Okay,
still good.
okay.
So in this, I was pulling up this cover of Justice League of America 161, and that's not her traditional
No,
costume.
it's not.
Right. This is her on the cover. Okay.
That's her.
So-
That's her unitard costume that it's affectionately known as.
Okay. All right. Well, I also cannot pinpoint the first time that I became familiar with the character. I feel like this is a character that I have always known about. And I know that's obviously not the case, but I really like going back to, to reading. When I was reading this stuff, I can't pinpoint an
Mm-hmm.
issue that's why I went and pulled up this Justice League cover. Thought, well, that probably could have been something that I had read with a friend or something like that. But I don't know this costume, so I'm familiar with the magician's assistant, the fishnet stockings,
Mm-hmm.
and that version of the character. So where that came about from, I have no idea. But I also don't feel like I've read a lot of Zatanna, but definitely some appearances in Swamp Thing. I think Alan Moore used her at some point in his run of
Oh yeah, yeah.
Zatanna or Swamp Thing. Okay, so that's probably where I
Or
read the most.
I say that, but I think it was as a group there were some magical characters, DC magical characters that
Yeah,
appeared.
like
Yeah,
Justice League Dark
sure,
kind of
right.
came into during at some point during Swamp Thing anyway. So that's probably where I started to become actually having read something of the character. But that would have been a long time after those issues. I did not read. I wasn't reading those books when they came
Right.
out. I was reading those after picking them up down the road some other time. So okay, so Shad, what are your initial thoughts then on the original version of the character? And we usually end up combining this with the
Right.
next question, which is basically what's changed. What do we know about the character's origin, all that fun stuff. So
So my initial thoughts of her is that it's a little corny. It's a little bit of just like a lot of magic tropes that are like, oh well, that's some low hanging fruit there. But uh, overall, the thoughts are. I don't know. From a surface level, she seems like she hasn't changed too much from where she currently is. But the one thing that I really enjoyed about the way that this origin first five kind of came together is the fact that these stories, how they all kind of came together and crossed over what, 4 years. I think 65 to 69 or 64 to 68, something like that. Like it's something crazy, like that. She just kind of shows up in this, and so it seems very thought out. The way that she's built into this, but we don't see a lot of stories, origin stories specifically, that are multi-part, happen randomly throughout time on there. But yeah, initial thoughts. I feel like I've seen her. Like when you see her now and you see her in 64 or whatever, there's not a giant change as far as looks. Power set, I'm sure, has changed a little bit here and there, but I don't know what her current power set is. But I mean, I like the character in general. I like magic. I like a dark kind of character, and like you guys said, it's a Justice League dark character now at this point. So
Hmm.
all right, Mike, what about you?
Well, I liked her as a magical character, because when, like I said, my first exposure to her was in Justice League when she was inducted. I don't know that I even knew what her powers were. I didn't know who she was, but she was the only magical character in the Justice League at the time. Now, the Justice Society had Dr. Fate, but she was definitely a power set that they were lacking. Her powers were something they could use. Uh, I I liked her from the beginning. I liked the aspect of her coming from a father and parents that were from two different worlds and their lives crossed, and uh, you know d- from that union came Zatanna. I don't think I think that essentially she is the same over the last, goodness, now let's see, was it 60 years, right?
yeah.
60 years or so. It was in 66 this.
64.
Yeah,
Yeah.
64. So yeah, so 60
60
years.
years, yeah. So other than a few costume changes, like she did start out with a fishnet and a top hat, as we see in these stories that we're talking about today, and then she went to that unitard big bodysuit that fully covered her from ankle to wrist or whatever, and then with, I believe it was around the time of Justice League when George Perez was drawing the Justice League, he designed a new costume for her, and that's the one where she has the cape and she has the sort of a headpiece. It's like a serpent, and definitely more superhero-ish looking. Very good design. But then eventually it came full circle, and she's back to the fishnet stockings and top hat and different variations of it, of course. But that's what she's most known for, is that look. As far as powers, yeah, it's the backward spell casting. It's always been, and it is kind of fun to try to put it together. But then if it's too much of it, you're like, okay, I'm tired of doing it. Let me put this in the
Yeah,
mirror.
that's a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so that's the question: is whenever you were reading this story, did you stop? Like, so you stopped and like actually read the words backwards to front to figure out what it was she was doing. You didn't try to pronunciate it as she was saying it or as it was spelled.
No, no, I did not do that. Now,
Okay.
now, there have been writers, and I can't name which ones they are, that have confused the semantics or the way that these backwards spelled spells are supposed to be put together. In these stories, it's a backwards. The first word of what is in the sentence is spelled backwards, the word itself, and then the second word of the sentence is spelled backwards. So
Mm-hmm.
it goes. The words in the
The
sentence are in
word order
order,
is
right?
correct. Yeah.
But there have
Mm-hmm.
been writers that have done the entire sentence backwards too. So that really can confuse matters. So it's kind of like Bizarro
Yeah.
when you start. You get a headache after a while trying to figure out what the heck is he talking about.
What does he actually mean?
Yeah, some of the longer ones, I definitely was just like, I think I can figure this out. I can
Yeah.
look at the image and kind of figure out what she's casting the spell of. I don't need to try to read this whole thing. Once it gets to like 7 words or more, I'm good.
So yeah, I felt like the character was fairly accurate to how the character is now. Obviously, they have greatly increased the sexualization of the character from 64 until 2024. And I didn't read what was it, Identity Crisis, where she's like mind wiping people
hmm
and such, or is that a different
No, that's
story
it.
where that
That's it.
happens?
Yeah.
Okay, so her she's kind of not I mean maybe not 100% pure in intent in the modern version of the character, but here it's obviously a pretty straightforward story trying to find her father.
Well, and that's the heart of the identity crisis. There's context to that story that explains why she did it,
Mm-hmm.
and whether it's right or wrong is a matter of opinion, both in the story and for readers. So I'll leave it at that. But yeah,
Yeah.
she's not inherently didn't like go to the dark side for a while and decide I'm just going to mind wipe
No.
people. But then you look back and in these stories in the 60s and 70s, it was nothing to for heroes, for characters to coerce people. I mean, you think about Dead Man occupying people's bodies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that
Hmm.
that would really. It's looked at a little bit differently these days. So I'm just saying it's of the time. There are some other things that are of the time in these stories that we'll get to, but or maybe when we talk about some of the, the moments that we were, um, that were had an impression on us.
Okay, so let's talk about power set then. So how would we describe Zatanna's power set to somebody who wasn't familiar with the character?
She's magical.
Just leave it
Right?
at
Yeah,
that.
just
Huh?
surface
Just
level.
leave it at
I mean,
magical.
I mean, to be honest, because I feel like at a certain point, like she can just kind of do whatever she wants as long as it's within the bubble of magic. Like, it just kind of it becomes yeah, she's got telepathy. She's got some transformation stuff. And she can alter reality in different ways. But it just kind of falls under she's a magician and.
And she knows the parlor tricks as well that she uses on
Hmm.
stage because that's her profession is a stage magician. And the thing is her mechanism for magic is her voice. She has to vocalize the spell, whereas some magicians need a
Hmm.
wand or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But she needs to not only speak the spell, but she has to say it backwards. So I would think that's of course that's always the way it's like Green Lantern in the color yellow. At least back in the day, the color yellow was his
Right.
was what would defeat him, or he didn't have any power over. Hers was that villains would somehow keep her from speaking,
Yeah.
and if they can beat her to the
So there's a
punch,
little
yeah,
bondage going on in some of her issues with the mouth being
yeah, right,
bound and all that fun stuff. Okay, all right.
and yeah,
Not quite to Wonder Woman
no.
level, but
And speaking of, you were talking about, the later years she became more sexualized. Her appearance was more of a sexy appearance. I think even back in the '60s stories like we have here in these 6 issues, she's not necessarily visually depicted as sexy, but the male characters are kind of goo goo gaga over her at times. Because it's like the first time they ever met a woman. They've had Wonder Woman around in their, you know,
uh,
interactions. They've all met Wonder Woman, but she's kind of
mhm.
like, she's up here. Zatanna was like approachable, cute girl. Like I can't talk to her, and I lose my mind.
So yeah, I mean, we definitely have the not really teleportation. I guess maybe it would be teleportation, but she's able to cross over, talk to people at a distance, split her body in two, right, into two whole parts. But I guess like half of her atoms go one place, though that breaks her powers whenever she
Mm-hmm.
does that. So there are definitely the strong, like you've been saying, Chad, that strong magical set. It's also when these characters get created, they really don't think about how powerful these characters actually
Right.
would be. So it's like down the road, it's like she says backwards, send Superman into the sun, and now Superman's gone, or it's sending him 100 million miles away, and don't have to worry about him for the next 25, 30
Mm-hmm.
millennia. So because that's all it would
Right.
technically
Yeah.
take,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it really is a particularly powerful character. It's like what I'm thinking of now is like Molecule Man from Marvel Comics. He can manipulate molecules. Well, gosh, if you can manipulate
Yeah.
molecules, what can you or can you not do? And he had this artificially placed limitation where he couldn't do anything organic, which eventually went away. But there for a time, I mean, it's like he's arguably one of the more powerful characters in the Marvel universe because of what he
Mm-hmm.
can do. So, and same way with Zatanna, she can do just about anything given the opportunity to
Yeah.
say it.
That
But a
was
good writer,
surprising.
yeah,
You know?
a good writer does like Fox here. He had to put some stumbling blocks in her way to keep her from defeating everyone. So in certain realms in these issues, she would lose. The opponent would be able to absorb her power, and she would lose her
Uh-huh.
power every time she cast a spell. There would be all kinds of little things that they
Mm-hmm.
had to. It's just the way you write comics and powers. So
It's like she had a limited amount of for a magical term mana that she could
yeah,
use, and after
and
she
to
used it so
regenerate,
much,
yeah.
she had to let it kind of
Mm-hmm.
recharge and get back. So, but again, that's up to their writer's discretion about how much they want to build that into the story.
And
So,
I believe her dad actually had the same powers, even in the Golden Age stories where he spoke his spells backwards. Now need to look that up and
dig
confirm.
into
Yeah,
that. So this is kind of really one of the first. Well, I guess it wouldn't be the first legacy character, but definitely an early legacy character because of the. It's not like it was a mantle that's passed on from a father to a daughter. It's not really like Flash, where it's
right.
the original Golden Age Flash and then a modernized Silver Age Flash. It's literally a transfer to a next
Right.
generation of
Yeah.
character. I mean, is there anybody else that would kind of
Hmm.
fit that mold like prior to this? I know I'm putting you on the spot, Mike, but
Well,
if something comes to mind, just shout it out later.
retroactively, it would be Jay Garrick and his daughter that we didn't know about until recently. Boom, I believe
Okay.
is what her name is, but that's retroactively. I
Yeah.
can't think of like a family business, passing on a family
Yeah.
business or superhero traits from father or mother to daughter or son off the top of my head.
I mean, probably in the 25 years that this from this character back to Superman, there probably was something, but
Yeah.
I'm not thinking of anything off the top of my head. So I was just kind of curious to see if you knew anything off the top of your head. Don't exert too much on that. So,
Okay.
um, all right. So, what moments in these first 5 or actually 6 issues do we want to talk about? I'm going to go first because this was a Facebook Messenger discussion briefly for us. So I opened up, and the second one was what, Detective 336, right? And I'm flipping through that first story, and there's a witch there, and I'm like, well, I don't see Zatanna. So then I go to the next story, and I think there was 3 in that book, and like never see her in costume, nothing. And I'm like, I don't think this is a Zatanna story. And Mike, you flipped through and said, nope, she's not in there. It must be a mistake. So then of course, what I do, you go to the internet, right? It's like, why is Detective 336 listed as a Zatanna story? Well, in Justice League 51, she says, oh, that was me. I was the witch. It doesn't explain why she was the witch, really. It just, that was
It
me.
does in the
So
story,
you
but not
have,
in that. Yeah, in the actual story it does,
yeah,
but it does. It didn't in the whatever where you looked it up because
336, yeah.
yeah, it doesn't in 336. But I mean, even in Justice League of America 51, she didn't really say why she did it. She was after something, but it's like, why did she turn into a witch? She wasn't casting spells backwards.
she thought she knew that the outsider, which was
Mm-hmm.
wasn't it Alfred back then? Alfred turned into
Spoiler.
sorry.
60-year-old spoiler.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I believe in that story she says she wanted to get close to the outsider because she thought he might have an idea where her dad was.
Or her father. Yeah. But still, it's not like she's riding a
Oh, the
broom.
contrivances
She's not-
are just all
Oh,
over
yeah.
the place.
It's-
Now,
in
is
all
that
these
retcon,
stories.
do you think? Is that you know,
Well, it's within a couple of years of what year was JLA 51? Did you say it was
66,
60?
I believe. 68? Oh my gosh.
think
These things
so.
did
Okay.
spread out.
yeah.
So, I mean, it's within 4 years. So it's not like it's a
67,
massive
sorry, yeah.
retcon. 67. Okay, so 3
Yeah.
years. So it's not like it's a massive retcon. And it's the same writer.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah, that's true.
did the writer intend that from the beginning? Or, no, probably
Yeah.
not. But maybe he just needed to include Batman. So it's like, oh, I had a story where there was a magical character. Let me just say that was
Right.
her. And then, maybe they needed to, well, I guess they weren't doing trades then. I thought they could pad the trade that
Yeah.
way. So that was just so odd to
Yes.
me, that's like it's a very early retcon is what it ultimately is. So
Yep.
all right. So Shad, what about you? You got a moment that you wanna call out?
The first moment that I was like, oh, I want to talk about this, just because I wasn't a big fan of the artwork on Detective Comics 355, the Elongated Man story.
Be careful,
Why is that?
because you know how Mike feels about elongated.
I know, and that's and but the who was the artist on that? I want to.
It's Carmine Infantino.
Okay. Yeah, and it was just the art was okay on it, but there was a moment where they're fighting against the Elongated Man, and Zatanna are fighting against the crooks, and the crooks are running away, and Elongated Man puts the coffin in front of the exit for them, and the sound effect is crump specifically, but it is drawn so well, and it looks like it hurts so bad. Like, I don't typically read a comic and go like, man, that looks like that hurt, but because it's just a drawing on a piece of paper. But the way that was just illustrated was so good, and I definitely wanted to bring attention to that.
Mike, what about you? You got a moment you wanna call out?
I think just story by story, I liked the Adam story probably the best. I like the Gil Kane art in both the Atom and the Green Lantern story. I don't like you get reminded as a kid. I don't even remember even batting an eye, but Hal Jordan, Green Lantern's sidekick, is a guy named Tom Kamaku, who is a First Nation, what we would have called our Inuit or whatever. Back then he was called Eskimo, but his nickname was Pie Face, which is about as derogatory as you can get. Or as far as a racial, slur or whatever, even if it was meant in quote unquote good humor, and the coloring for his skin was pretty exaggerated. So That was a bad reminder. I did like the Gardner. It was the Green Lantern story, wasn't it? Where Gardner Fox had he had to have had a book of pirate phrases because that pirate had he had one for every other word with some sort of a you know it was pretty funny. So
Yes.
and my other
Avast, ye lubberly door! Nothing keeps Patch Eye Pete from the loot waiting on of the hold of this fine
yeah
bank.
yeah
Oyster
it's
anchor and be
just,
There you
gone.
go.
Yeah.
yeah he had to have a
Shiver me timbers! Look who's coming abeam of me.
oh and elongated man, yeah, he's my favorite character. I do at least he's in my favorite costume, that black and or blue and red costume,
Okay.
and not the purplish one. But then when you get to the Justice League story, it was miscolored into a purple and black, very purplish looking. So yeah, oh there's
Okay, I'm sorry you can't see. It's too much a reflection in my camera for you to see. I'm just curious to know. I was curious to know if the digital coloring was different than the printed
oh
copies
yeah I
coloring
can't
because it's not an exaggerated yellow
oh
like what I would expect. It's really just kind of a olive complexion. It's not
it's
the coloring is not something that I thought in this version was
I don't know.
offensive. Yeah, there's too much glare. I can't.
Well, you can see right
Yeah,
there. It's
yeah.
very
Mhm.
orange.
It's yours is darker. Yeah, yours is
Yeah.
darker
Yeah.
than mine. Okay,
I mean,
so
it's almost jaundice
but
looking.
anytime we talk about the coloring, I go back to when we did
Yeah.
Vigilante. So, and in Vigilante, they were representing somebody who was of Arab descent, and they were literally purple. It was almost
Yeah.
like it was the Purple Man from Marvel Comics, how purple the
Yep.
character was. And I just remember Dan Brown's description of this is that hey, they're working with a limited color palette. This is pre all the digital coloring and such. So to differentiate somebody ethnically, they just kind of chose that
Mm-hmm.
particular color. So it's not that it's always, it's not, it's even there. It's not like it's exaggerated as it was like during the 40s when you were dealing with, Japan, right? I mean, it was literally a yellow skin as
Right.
opposed to something that was, was closer to this.
Right.
So
Right.
the name I thought was pretty
Yeah.
bad, but the coloring I didn't bother me. At least again, that's in the
Mhm.
digital version, not in the original. It could be completely different in the original.
Now, for any listener that happens to read any of these stories themselves, I just wanted to point out my favorite panel of all of the stories, and that's on page 2 of the Justice League story, Justice League 51, and it's the bottom right panel. I'll show it to you guys, and that's where you see Green Lantern and Zatanna is
Uh-huh.
is hugging those two guys, and they're just like, you know, googly over it. Oh gosh. I just thought that was hilarious the way that was drawn.
I forgot about just smiley Batman, just like a very
Oh right, yeah.
just happy and just smiling Batman. It was like, oh yeah, I forgot that there was a time when most of the time he wasn't brooding.
Right.
Oh, let's see. Okay, the Atom story was reprinted in what issue? Because I didn't read it in the Atom. I read it in
Uh,
an issue of
yeah,
Detective. Was it? Okay, it must be this one. One thing.
438.
Okay, yeah. So I got to swipe through to actually find it. But did you see the error that they made when they introduced Zatanna in that issue? Okay, that's not it. That's the elongated man one. Okay, hold on. I got to find it. So did either of you find the error?
I guess not.
Okay, so when they introduce her, there's a little blurb at the bottom, an editor's note, and it says first introduced in. It had an issue number 4, but instead of saying Hawkman number 4,
Oh,
they said
yep,
Supergirl
I did
number
read that.
4. So
What?
yeah, so they actually the editor's note gave the wrong issue number. So
That's right. I forgot about that.
all right, what was it? Was Detective what? Detective
438. And that was
438.
back
Okay,
when those detective comics they were 100-page giants.
mm-hmm.
Had a lot of reprints.
Okay, yeah,
I'm not seeing that. I'll keep looking for that in the Adam story. Where
Yeah, I almost now in that Detective 438, I almost thought thought about stopping and reading and reading those Manhunter stories because I haven't read those.
Oh my
Mm.
goodness, that's yeah,
I knew you'd want to say something about
yeah,
those.
they are good, and they're rereadable, and you'll want to
Mhm.
reread them. It's very compressed, but it's a pretty cool storyline. I can't find it at
All
all.
right.
Shoot, I
Well,
wonder if it's
I'm flipping through. Here we go.
what
Okay, that's the
page is
first
it on in the
story.
Adams story.
That's what I'm. That's what I'm going to or trying to find it here. Okay, so there's the first page. Where's it? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't this issue. Maybe it was in one of the others. It must have been in one of the
Okay,
others. Okay, so it wasn't that one.
well we'll just
It
So
wasn't in
I tell you what, you
JLA.
go
Okay.
on. Yeah, tell us about something else, and I'll find where that
well
aired.
in the Adams story, I want to say this that I had forgotten that one of his powers back in the 60s and 70s was he could fly, but not really. He had to glide on the air currents, kind of like a feather, and he just happened to get to where he was trying to get to. So it was so ridiculous that he didn't have the power of flight, but he could make his weight so low that the air could lift him up, but he had no control over his direction. And I did say that Adam story was my favorite, but I think it was my favorite because, or I liked it. I liked it in the Green Lantern story because of Gil Kane's art. But the first story with Hawkman and Hawkgirl was my favorite story overall, both story and art. Murphy Anderson, he knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, and I really do like that origin of her. Like you meet her when she's split in half and speaking gibberish. Like that's just
Yeah.
a cool way to introduce a character, I think.
Did you kind of like figure out that you were only seeing half of her words
It took me a
right off
little
the
bit. It
bat?
was probably a
Yeah.
couple of pages before I was like, "Oh, wait, that seems like half of something." Uh,
Yeah, right, right.
yeah.
I Zat da
Yeah.
oh Zat. I'm like, something's there, but I don't know what.
Right. I think my favorite issue though is that JLA 51. It is beyond weird
Oh,
in ways the way that story just it's
yes.
weird in so the good
Yeah.
ways with like the possession and then the exorcism and Zatanna's making different versions of people because she met them and so somehow she has this power of just like, well, I've met you before, so I can now create you out of nowhere, and
Yeah,
then
with all of your powers.
yes.
Why not just conjure up the entire Green Lantern Corps?
Yeah,
You could win any
exactly.
fight.
Exactly. And then Zatara having to find the good version of the bad witch in order to fight her. It felt like, honestly, like a superhero version of the Wizard of Oz. Like, it was like, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there. And the wizard was, Zatara was the Wizard of Oz. And, like, it just, and the witches were the good witch and the bad witch. It felt
Yeah,
very Wizard of Oz in it.
yeah.
Okay, so it was in Detective 438
Uh huh.
on page 23, which is actually the first panel in the Adams story where you see
Okay.
Zatanna.
Okay.
So it's page
Yep.
23, and it's like, Zatanna, I recall Hawkman speaking of you, little asterisk, and then you go down to the editor's note, see Supergirl number 5, the girl who split in two.
Well, you know what
Yep.
that
Instead of saying, or, oh, they even say Supergirl 5 instead of Hawkman 4. I thought it said
Yeah.
Supergirl 4, but it's,
that would be the editor's
yeah.
mistake on Detective Comics because it's not in this collection, and
They must have removed it from the collection then.
maybe that could be.
Yeah.
I don't know. Now I'm gonna have to pull up. Well, you crack that slab when you got there open and see.
Well,
Oh,
no,
it was in
because
the
this
Adams
is not
story.
in.
That's right. Yeah.
It's in the
Yeah, it's in
Adam.
the
Yeah.
Adams
Okay.
story, not in the.
Okay. Now.
Yeah, not in the Hawkman story.
Oh Lord, I'm getting confused. Yeah, I need to pull up.
I'm not going to crack open my slab. I mean, it's just a 6.5, but I'm still not going to crack it open. So,
Well, there are some characters that fit with the 60s, that fit in the 60s, in my opinion. Green Lantern, the Atom. Yeah, they're both scientists or science based characters. I can go along with the weirdness of the elongated man, but and Hawkman with his, this version of Hawkman was he was a cop. He and his wife were police officers on Thanagar before they came to Earth, and they weren't really based on mysticism or anything like that, like the original Golden Age Hawkman. But the Batman is the least to me that fits into the Silver Age goofiness. It's just maybe we've just been exposed to too many Batman stories, basically from Denny O'Neil on. We started the transition to a little bit more serious, darker character, and I can't. Yeah. Although I didn't mind him in the '70s, he'd smile once in a while. He'd have some lighthearted moments, but he was basically just kind of silly in some of these.
Yeah. One thing that surprised, well, again, talking about how silly some of these stories were, that Hawkman #4,
Yeah.
where so Hawkman and Hawkwoman randomly find these two unexplained artifacts in their museum.
Mm-hmm.
So what's their solution to that? They drop everything and fly to remote parts of the world to deal with these two random artifacts that just appeared in their museum. And that's how the adventure starts. It's not like, well, let's check the video or let's dust for prints
Right.
and see who left them. Or no, let's just
To
fly
wherever these
to
things
remote
came from. Yeah.
came from, because that has to be how they got here. They were just magically transported. So, so yeah, some of the plot devices were pretty thin, but I think that's probably pretty common for a Silver
Right.
Age story.
Right. And this had to be one of the first. Maybe you mentioned this earlier, did you, Scott, about it being one of the first crossover events in comics?
I think Shad kind of hinted about
Yeah, I
that,
thought
but
you
it's
might have said that. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
yeah, you just didn't see this very often.
Because I mean, to have a reader who, if they like this and they come in at issue, you know, well, JLA 51, it's like, well, I don't remember any of these stories. Where are they going to go track that down?
Right.
I mean, there weren't a lot of comic shops at that time, so. But I guess comics were selling a few 100,000 copies as opposed to the 10 to 20,000 that typically get sold
Right.
now. So maybe there were just more out floating around a little bit. So they could ask somebody else on the block, hey.
Right.
Well, and they'd be disappointed when they picked up Supergirl #5. And
Oh,
like,
no
there's
kidding.
no Zatanna in here.
There wasn't even a Supergirl title back then. It wasn't until the 70s.
Oh, that makes it even worse then. So that's what you were saying. It had to have been an editor in the detective books mistake.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Because there wasn't a super. Okay, that makes sense because she started in Adventure Comics or
Yeah,
solo
she was
title,
in
right?
Adventure Comics for, gosh, I don't know. It was late 60s maybe she started in Adventure, but then she got her own title not long after that, and it was, I think, early 70s. Yeah, so she didn't even have a title for them to mistakenly cite unless it was the Detective Comics editor doing it, because that issue came out in the 70s.
Okay, I see what you're saying now. So, all right. Well, do you have, I guess, any other favorite stories or favorite issues that you want to discuss with Zatanna?
Well, I wish I would have pulled out. There's a couple different Zatanna storylines over the years. She's never had her own Wait, she did have her own ongoing book. She sure did. And I want to. No, I might be mixing her up with Madame Xanadu.
Yeah.
But I think Zatanna had her own too. I can't remember who the creator was, but she also had like a 4-issue miniseries at one point with some, or maybe there was a one shot, but she had a lot of exposure in Justice League Dark and some of the other group stories, group books. She was in Sentinels of Magic, things like that.
Yeah, it's one of the things I noted is that they are like they have Madame Xanadu, they have other magical characters that they've introduced that really feel very similar, just like a slightly different costume,
Right.
Than what you have with Zatanna. So
Yeah, the Madame Xanadu, I'm pretty sure was written by Matt Wagner with art by Amy Reeder, which was some of the best stories I had ever read in comics. So I'm conflating, I think, those with the Zatanna ongoing that was, if I have 15 issues here, it was written by Paul Dini and Stefan Roux. or Roe. It's I've met him before at Heroes Con, but it was I don't know how many, if I have all 15 issues or 16 issues, but it was pretty good storylines with Paul Dini on the art or on the writing.
I just remembered that Zatanna was in the most recent um, Young Justice animated cartoon. She was like training some of the quote unquote newer heroes like Mary Marvel and
Oh,
such. So she was there as a teacher and instructor, and it had the Witch Boy. Is that
Clarion.
the Kirby character? Yeah, Clarion. Thank you. It had the Witch Boy in it at various
Hmm.
points and during that series as well. So okay, well, we're going to. I guess the next question is Mike, as far as seeking this character out specifically, are you planning to do that, or are you just gonna, do like I normally do? And if it's a good story, I'm happy to
Right.
read it, but otherwise, I don't normally seek them out.
If I mean, we don't have to look very hard to say that we're seeking them out because we do our our lunar and our pre-orders and our
Mm-hmm.
previews. So
Yeah.
if I were to see a new Zatanna story, or she's going to be front and center in a another book, yeah, that would cause me to be more inclined to pick it up because she's a good character and one that I've always liked. So she's a legacy character and she's been around for a long time, and she kind of balances the testosterone out in some of the male dominated stories and books. So yes.
Okay. So yeah, I'm the same way I am on most of these characters. If I know that there's a good storyline, I probably want to seek it out. I'm half tempted to maybe start reading a little bit of Identity Crisis. How long is that series anyway? Is it
It's
like
seven
a
issues.
six issue,
Seven.
7 issues? Okay, so that's manageable. I probably should seek that out, but maybe I won't like what they did with the character,
Mm.
and it'll cause me to like the character less. So, Shad, what about you?
I agree with the statement of just if it's a good story, I'll seek it out for sure. But there's nothing. There wasn't this giant draw that I must go and get more Zatanna now, for sure.
Well,
Okay,
but
final
let
thoughts,
let
Mike.
me respond to what you thought about not reading Identity Crisis. I definitely, I know you did. There's a chance that you won't like some of the outcomes, but to me, I'm not going to hold it against a fictional character. I'm going to hold it against the writer. so,
Right.
if they get rewritten later and they're redeemed, I mean, there's
Mhm.
been enough time since Hal Jordan went totally evil and destroyed, the entire core.
Yeah.
But anyway, just just was kind of thinking out loud there. No, I don't have any other final thoughts. This was kind of neat going back to the Silver Age and seeing a
Mhm.
storyline, not individual stories, but an actual storyline for her first 5 appearances.
Okay. All right. Well, we ready to switch over to what we've been reading?
Yeah.
What have we been reading?
Okay. Well, I'm going to start this one. I'm going to start with something that was a huge disappointment. Surprise, surprise, coming from me. Right. So there was this title. It's been a while now. So this was from October of 2022, called "The Abolition of Man."
Yeah.
And the reason why I picked this book up was this was when the whole artificial intelligence thing with
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT had kind of just really hit the forefront for people. And there was a tool that came out called, I think it was called Midjourney. And what it basically did was allow you to type in a prompt, and then it would provide artwork. And in this particular case, it would give you like four different little square images that you could choose from based on the prompt. So this book gets solicited, Abolition of Man, and it basically somebody had decided to put artificial AI artwork to C.S. Lewis's essay, The Abolition of Man. I thought that
Hmm.
sounds really,
Mm-hmm.
really cool. So it's like, again, AI art was at the zeitgeist. It was just really something that was kind of being introduced. So I finally, 2 years later, I can finally get around to reading this book. And again, the reading is just C.S. Lewis's essay, Abolition of Man, but it was a 5-issue series. I thought, well, okay, they're going to maybe do some other stuff with C.S. Lewis. So I read the first one, and it's terrible. So this is something that any of us could have done. And what's bad is the artist, or the quote, I shouldn't say artist, the person who put this together. Literally, what they did is they would take a certain number of sentences of the essay, paste it into, I'm gonna double check, I think it was Mid-Journey, and they would look at just the 4 images, and it was Mid-Journey, just the 4 images that was provided. They would choose the best one, and that's the art that they would use for that particular sentence. Mm-hmm. So it's not like they said, I'm going to tweak the prompt just a little bit. I'm going to make it look something a little bit more relevant. No, so anybody could have done this. So here I dropped $6.99 on this. And then the worst part was the second issue, nothing to do with C.S. Lewis. So even though they kept calling it The Abolition of Man, it was just dropped. So this was from Carson Grubaugh, from Living the Line Publishers. I bought a couple of copies of the first issue because it was the whole C.S. Lewis tie-in. And I think most people are familiar with C.S. Lewis, but if you aren't, it's the Chronicles of Narnia is the fiction that he's best known for. I was super excited about it, and it was such a huge disappointment. So I strongly discourage anybody from picking this up. The second and third issue are like he makes up his own story and is still using Mid-Journey to create the art. And now we know that all of this AI art is basically just stealing from other artists. So it's definitely something that should be skipped. And just as a side note, typically when you see AI generated art, where people are trying to sell it, then you should take a pass on that as well. And I think I saw in the news where like Colin Kaepernick is going to be like trying to sell comic books using AI art, and somebody said, hey, AI art's stealing from other people, and he's like, I don't care. Man. so just putting that out there as well. So something to avoid. Abolition of Man.
He is like Mr. Controversy. I mean, he's finding a way to insult
no matter what.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Everybody. Yeah. So. All right, Mike. What about you? What do you got?
I'd like to talk about a one-shot called Death Ratioed by Mark Russell and art by Laci, L-A-C-I. Had not heard of this artist before. I don't know if it's a pseudonym or a shortening of the artist's name. It also has listed in the credits Marco Lesko, but I don't know if that's a colorist or a letterer or what. But this book, I like Mark Russell anyway. He has dark humor, and it's futuristic. He lived up to every expectation I had and exceeded it. Just imagine in this day and age of social media and the prevalence of it in our everyday lives. Now, you guys haven't read this, right?
No.
Okay,
no.
So I don't want to give away too much, but just imagine you're in a coma. You go into a coma and you awaken 20 years later, where you find out that society is not governed by government anymore, but by social media. And to stay alive, you have to have more likes than dislikes, or a little collar around your neck will go kaboom. And it makes me want, I mean, there is sort of an ending, but it could be continued in a sequel. But it's just fantastic. I don't want to give much more than this. And the art, I mean, I'm not much on the stylistic art. I do like some stories told with that type of art, but this is very realistic, and it's well put together, well composed, and I recommend it to anyone to read. Death Ratioed being RATIO''D.
Okay.
Don't let social media go to your head is the tagline.
I am going to say that that sounds an awful lot like an episode of Black Mirror, the Netflix series.
Oh yeah.
Short of them blowing up, getting blown up. If it's like sounds like this Netflix or Black Mirror episode meets the Suicide Squad.
Oh yeah,
is what
yeah.
that ratio would sound to
I'll
me.
be darned.
So just throwing that out
Yeah,
there.
I haven't seen that show, so
Oh well, the show is awesome if you can get past the first episode.
okay.
There's something with a pig that is very, very difficult to stomach.
Okay.
So I'm not going to say anything else.
Okay.
Uh,
All right.
and my advice is to a lot of people is to just skip the first episode, go to the second one, because I actually stopped watching it, and it took me months to come back to it
Oh
after
my.
the first episode. So. Shad, do you know what I'm
I
talking
have
about?
not watched it either.
Oh, okay, all right. So,
My imagination is running
all right,
wild.
Shad, what do you got?
My first book that I read, I believe Atch actually has this book as well, is Shock Shop, which also came out in 2022. And I'm also reading some backlog stuff that I haven't gotten to. This was a flip book written by Cullen Bunn and art by Danny Luckert, and the other book drawn by Leah Lees, I believe is how you say her last name. And this had two different stories, one called Familiars and one called Something in the Woods, both about a splitting of two people in a relationship. One, they're already divorced. The other one, they're going through a tough time. And they're both kind of creature stories. In that the Familiars one, the guy rents a house that is haunted by these demons, and they, unbeknownst to him, do his bidding. So when he is like frustrated with somebody, they go out and just kill the person. To the point where I think they're getting ready to like kill his ex-wife because he was just frustrated with her, and then spoilers, they figured out how to stop them. And then the other story is about a husband and wife that go on a camping trip with their friends, and as they're going through, they find that they're being stalked by this creature that keeps killing their friends. And so a lot of killing, a lot of creatures, but good. I was actually surprised. I was thinking, I don't know how this is actually going to be executed. But the Something in the Woods story, I really, really enjoyed. The other one was good as well, but not as good if I had to put one up on the other. But definitely enjoyed both. And it was a 4-issue series from Dark Horse, and I definitely would recommend it. Though I guess I don't quite understand the appeal to a flip book aside from getting 2 covers. Is that really like the only cool thing? Because otherwise you just put it as an anthology and read them back to back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Which book was that again? That was a
Shop. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got those. I believe that series and Creepshow were coming out about the same time.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. Or at least the first volume. I think they're on volume 3 of Creepshow now.
Yeah, they've kept that thing going.
Yeah.
All right. So I did not recommend Abolition of Man. Mike, you do recommend Death
Yes.
Ratioed. Shad, you
I
do
do
recommend
recommend Shock Shop. Yeah.
Shop. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, since you're talking about flip books, I'm going to change what I'm going to talk about next. So I did finally get Life #1 from Distillery. Everybody knows how much I'm in love with Distillery right now. All right, written by Brian Azzarello, art by Stephanie Phillips, and the concept from this is also a flip book. So, and you have what it was advertised as is that there's going to be 2 separate stories that eventually will meet and they'll kind of come together. Now, I don't know if it's going to stay a flip book through all 4, or I think it's a 4-issue series. I have to double check that. But, this is like, for me, this is Distillery's last chance. Okay. I'm not going to buy anything else Distillery if I don't like this. And based on the first issue, to be honest, I'm not sure. It's better. It's better than any of the other Distillery stuff that I have read so far. That being said, the whole flip book thing is a complete gimmick. Because the solicits made it sound like that this is something that you're going to have these 2 separate stories, and as we near the end, that's when we're going to see that they are kind of intertwined. It kind of, the solicit felt like it was going to be like Trillium from Jeff Lemire, how that's you have this like story that as it progresses, all of a sudden it's gonna kind of come together like Trillium did. Well, they don't delay. The end of the first issue, the flip side, the two stories have already met. So there's no need for the continued flip book status, at least in my opinion, after the first issue. Because so what happens is the first half, the first side A, is there's this team of thieves that's going to go to this planet. This is a futuristic story. Interplanetary travel is happening. They're going to go to this other planet that's been an abandoned planet. That is, they're going to go and steal something that was left behind. Side B story is somebody was convicted of a crime. They were sent to basically a prison planet. Well, what has happened on this person was sentenced to like 39 life sentences. Well, apparently for some way, this person can actually live out those 39 life sentences on this remote planet. It's not like they, have their one life and they're dead. So, but what the combination is, well, the planet that they're going to steal this thing from and the prison planet are the same planet. So the ship lands and the prisoners are going to try to steal the ship to get off the planet. The thieves are coming in to steal whatever it is that's of value that they're going to go after. And that's the end of the first issue, and everything's kind of met up. Okay, so the whole premise falls apart. Again, it's oversized magazine. I'm just not a fan of that. We could have done this in a regular size book. That just increases the price of the book. And you've got a bunch of thieves going against a bunch of criminals. It's like, who do you really root for? There's not like a positive protagonist that you can really get on the side of. The closest thing is one of the thieves is like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is my last job. He's done. He's getting out of prison. His girlfriend his much younger girlfriend convinces him, oh, do one more score and then we'll be done. Right. So this is the one more score. So maybe that character will grow on me as the story proceeds. I did order issue 2. So I'm probably going to go ahead and finish the series and see what happens. So I give it a hesitant positive, but it could go downhill really, really fast. And the premise and the flip book thing is just a complete waste. It should have just been a regular book and just intermix the stories.
Walking a tightrope there for your final.
It is, yeah.
Your final decision.
Yeah. I'm going to keep going with it, but who knows?
Kind of what you were talking about, the protagonist not being all that good. It sounds a little bit like that Cowboy Bebop story. It's set in space, and they weren't necessarily all good guys. It doesn't. At least I don't remember them being. Huh. Well, who's the writer again, Scott?
Oh, so it's Brian Azzarello and art Stephanie Phillips.
Okay.
So, yeah. All right, Mike, what do you got next?
I think I've got a theme going on here. From Death Ratio, now we go to Ain't No Grave.
Ooh.
And Ain't No Grave is I believe it's a 5-issue series. I've only read 4 issues, and it's by Scotty Young with art by Jorge Corona, who gets a lot of. Scotty Young is Eisner nominated. Jorge Corona, I think, is well known. Basically, you have it's a mixing of genres. You got Western mixed in with fantasy, and I definitely that piques my interest because I was always a big Stephen King Dark Tower series fan, and that's kind of the same way. But in this case, you've got I forget her name now. She's the main character. She's Ryder is her name, Ryder. She's basically the most, she's got her husband, and their child, and she is the most violent, has the most violent past, but then she fell in love with this guy and settled down, became a mother, and then as life was going really well, she starts pulling the old Doc Holliday, start coughing up blood stuff, and finds out she's dying. So the premise of the story is she leaves her family. She tells them, I want to leave you, because at least I'm going to do it on my own terms. I'm going to say my goodbyes now. But if I get to my end goal, I will see you again. Her end goal being, apparently death actually resides. I mean, the figure of death resides in some place in this story, and she has to go through all these, fights and battles and whatever to get to death and take him on. And if she can beat him somehow, well, then she literally beats death and she lives. So I don't know how it ends because I don't have the last issue, but I'm kind of like you with life. I'm not a big fan of this art. It's the way, I mean, it's good, but I don't know why she's got, her and other characters are just so bulkily clad with so many clothes. It's just like she's wearing 7 blankets around her, and it seems unnecessary, seems cluttered, but that's kind of a minor distraction. Otherwise, I'd probably give it a not quite a thumbs up, just wavering from horizontal to the, maybe at an angle up a bit. So yeah.
Well, Mike, I'm glad you took my recommendation to read that book from our last What Have You Been Reading, because I had read that on the last What You've Been Reading that we did.
I forgot about that. Oh my gosh.
I loved that first issue. I'm going to go back and read the rest of it. I like the artwork because it was its own thing, right? So it's this creator team, because I'm usually not a fan of Scotty Young stuff.
Right.
But that, and it's the whole premise is like it's like Greek mythology. She's going to cross the river Styx
now that I hear you talk about it, I do remember that now.
Death, yes,
man.
So, but hey, it's worth mentioning again because that was an awesome first issue of a book, and I was so pleasantly surprised by that. I'm a double thumbs up on that first issue. There's no hesitation. Now, who knows if 2 through whatever can finish it, but man, that first issue, I'm in. I have to track that.
I'm 3 issues
in,
and I love it too.
I will give you. I'll give you the rest of my run here. I'll give it all to you. Yeah, so I've read issues 1 through 4. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is it 5 issues?
Yeah, I believe it's 5 issues. Or? Yeah, I just don't have that final issue yet. So I'll give them to you whenever we get together again. So.
Okay. All right. Well, after you get hold on to it till you get the 5th issue, and I'll just read it all then.
Okay.
So. But no, I loved it. I'm
glad you said that, because any listeners that listen to more than one episode of ours are probably going, "Wait a second, this sounds familiar."
Yeah.
Oh well, at least we got 2 different takes on it.
That's right.
Hey, yeah. Yeah. So no, well, hey, it's what you've been reading. So I'm glad I influenced you.
There you go.
All right, Shad, what do you got next?
Well, the next book I read was Clementine, book 1. So a few years back, this was also in 2022. I guess I'm reading from the 22 pile. This was the spin-off of The Walking Dead. The character Clementine was from the video game, The Walking Dead video game.
The Telltale series.
And I didn't play those, so... but I was excited for more Walking Dead. This is written and drawn by Tilly Walden. And I am ashamed to say I don't really like this book. I think I met my match for a quote-unquote stylized art style that I did not really enjoy. And I think more than anything, this kind of art style in black and white, and Tilly is also lettering this book, and so it's a very distinct lettering style that she has that it all just kind of took me out of it. There wasn't anything that really was drawing me in. I found myself getting lost in the story and getting lost through what was all happening. This will be a 3-book series. The second book is out and is on my bedside stand, and I'm going to try to read through it to just be like, I bought it, so I must read it. But I don't know that I will. If I can't latch onto it, I don't know that I'll finish the second book. But it follows Clementine post the video game, and in her kind of journey to move past the world that she was kind of in, and getting. I think she lost a leg, I guess, in the video game. So it's kind of her rebuilding story and establishing her new life, new friendships, and but yeah, just not for me. And looking at Tilly Walden's other work, I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't think that this art style is for me. Period. On that, but so Clementine was a little bit of a thumbs down for me.
Okay, so you said you did not play
I
the
did
video
not
game.
know.
Okay, so you don't know if the art style matches the video game.
It doesn't
then?
match the video game because I have seen. I've tried to play
Okay.
it, but I played like maybe not even the first chapter of it.
Okay, yeah, because it's really just a visual story that occasionally you got to push a button on or make a choice. You know, it's not like a really tough video game, but it was I thought the video games had an excellent story. So I had this on my radar to read at some point, but I had not read it yet. So, but I don't remember because I did play the first and second game, and I don't remember Clementine losing a leg in the game. So I wonder if that's something that happened in the interim. But then again, it's been a while since I played the game. So, all right. Okay, so next I have a book from a local creator. It's actually so the creator's name is Todd Fox, and he has done work for Marvel, like on the Punisher. He has done work like with on Scout. So and there's a lot of other things. Marvel Comics Presents, and oh my goodness, there's some other series that are just not coming to mind. But this is something called the Blue Gardenia. It's from a series called The Terribles, which apparently there's 3 books in this: The Blue Gardenia, The Devil You Know, and Sharks Gotta Eat. I've read 2 of the 3. I have not read Sharks Gotta Eat yet, but I have the Blue Gardenia. I have a reprint that he had just done. I picked this up in Evansville directly from him last year. I just now got around to reading it. So, but the concept, this is going to sound very, very familiar. So you have a hotel where assassins go to stay, and the hotel is under a certain set of rules where you do not have gunfights or conflicts inside the hotel. Does this sound vaguely familiar to anybody? Yeah, so it sounds exactly like
it's the John Wick Hotel. I don't remember its name.
So I don't know the name of the hotel either. I don't remember it, but I'm sitting here reading this, and it's like, well, I was going, well, Todd, are you just going to rip off John Wick? And then I go back to the very, very end, and the Blue Gardenia, the first 40 pages, serialized in the zine Antaxic 1 through 5 in 1995 to 1997.
Oh, wow.
Now, I'm not for sure what John Wick is based off of, but my goodness, if John Wick doesn't have another thing that it's based off of, it is based off of this story. So if you are a fan of the shoot 'em up hitman fighting, it's all black and white. He reprinted it oversized, so I got to give him a little gig for not just doing this regular comic size, because now I got to figure out where I'm going to keep it in my collection. But it's pretty solid for a spy assassin, story. Another thing that's kind of humorous is one of the characters. There's a group of guys that Todd is friends with, and like several of the characters are based on his friends. So there's like a guy named Ted Haycraft, who helps with the museum comic show there in Evansville, Indiana. He's the main protagonist in this story. So that's kind of cool to see them, seeing them drawn into a book. So I did enjoy both of these stories, and that's not just because I consider myself to be a friend with the creator. I think they're really, really solid, and definitely worth reading. So if you are at a show in the Southern Indiana area and you see Todd Fox listed as a guest, stop by and tell him you want one or more of his The Terribles books.
Okay.
And you can probably find him on Facebook too. Just search for Todd Fox. He's from Evansville, Indiana. Just send him a message.
All right. Is it
Mike?
me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so my third book or series is Blood Commandment by Simon Kudransky. Now, it's a 4-issue series. I have all 4 issues. I've read all 4 issues. I don't know what prompted me to buy this because I'm not normally a horror guy per se, but I do like a good vampire story. And let me tell you, this is an excellent all-in-one story that features vampires and the creation of vampires and the choices that are made. And it reminded me a lot of the Interview with a Vampire. So I don't want to give away too much because all I can tell you is that I've heard of Kudransky before, but I've never experienced his art. It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. Because it's a vampire book, almost every scene is nighttime, yet it doesn't have that dark, muddy look to the art. It's very clear and crisp, and you know what you're looking at. He's the writer, he's the artist, he's the colorist, he's everything. And this is by Image Comics. Don't know exactly when it came out, but I think it's pretty recently, just this past year. And essentially, a father and his son are the father's raising his son after the mother had died of cancer some years ago. The son's maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, and the father is I don't think it's spoiling anything because it tell you right off the bat he's a vampire, but he's basically a good vampire. So you've got that basic good vampire versus bad vampire type story, and how this good vampire Ezra is trying to raise his son in the deep woods, where in a valley where the sun hardly ever shines, because of the trees. And it's it's got a lot of humanity to it. I'm telling you that the last issue had some quotes in it that I actually wanted to write down because it was so poignant. So I'm not being I'm not exaggerating by saying this really took me by surprise. I thought it was going to be kind of run of the mill, but so I don't know if either one of you have heard of this, but I'm telling you right now, anybody that likes a vampire story, especially something that has some substance to it, I definitely recommend picking this up.
And that title again?
Blood Commandment.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I know Shad, you're definitely a horror guy. So
yeah.
as I read this, I thought, yeah, this is not. It's not like Texas Chainsaw Massacre type stuff. It's got in my opinion, it's the kind of horror I like to read about. That's why I always like the Anne Rice novels.
Mm-hmm.
Shad, you got another one?
I read the last two, I guess, blocks of story or whatever from the Jim Henson Storyteller series, the Tricksters and the Shapeshifters ones, which came out in 21 and 22. And those this is like the, I think, 7th and 8th volume of the Storyteller series that they were doing. And they're 4 issues each. There always is a different standalone story, different creative teams, and I think that as it was either me or the story, by the time I was hitting that last volume of it, I was like, I think that I'm done with these kind of one-off stories a little bit. And I'm very much an anthology and one-shot kind of guy, but I think I found that there is a balance between the two, and that sometimes you want a narrative that lasts a little bit longer than 22 pages. So these they were okay. I would give them the thumbs in the middle kind of grade for both of these. That they were just okay. The artwork was good, the story was good, but it was just okay together.
Do we want to do one more? Are we done?
I'm prepared either way.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and throw out one more, and then y'all give you the option to throw out additional ones if you want. So I have something actually fairly recent. I did pick up the Pedestrian issue number 1.
I've got it too.
From Magma. All right, and I have actually read it. It is very quirky. I cannot decide if I like it or not. I think I do. I think I like it. But the concept is you basically, it starts off with this lady. She's gets off work. It's late at night. She's walking down the street. She gets mugged, and this guy, basically dressed all in white with a little walk symbol on his chest. He's the hero, the pedestrian of the book. He basically trips up the mugger, and whatever. But the mugger's running away, and the pedestrian is chasing the mugger. But then at the crosswalk, it switches from walk to don't walk. So he stops. And he doesn't chase the mugger any further because he's going to obey all the laws of the city. So he's stand there. It's like, don't walk, don't walk. And then as soon as the walk sign goes, he starts power walking, after the bad guy. And it's just that little type of weirdness. So we have a father who's got 2 kids. They've just moved to this town. We have the mugger is actually apparently going to be a prominent character in the story because we learned that the mugger is kind of down on his luck. He's been in jail. He's trying to just get back on his feet to help his kid. And like the pedestrian one evening shows up at the mugger's front door, not to beat him up or take him to jail, but he returns his wallet to him because he dropped it during the mugging.
Oh my goodness.
So it's just very offbeat. I think I'm going to have to read the second issue at least. And there is a villain. Well, we assume it's going to be a villain that gets introduced, who it's a character who is dressed all in black, and on their face they have the red "Don't Walk" hand, as like their icon or whatever. So it's very quirky and kind of interesting. So this is from Magma, and I don't think they say how many issues it's going to be. I'm assuming it's going to be 4 to 6 issues. Written by Joey Esposito. I assume art by Sean Von Gorman. So yeah, I think I give it a recommendation. But I'll know more. I don't think issue 2 is out yet. If it is on shelves, it's just hit shelves. So, but yeah, the pedestrian probably worth giving a try, at least the first issue, and maybe pick up subsequent
Good.
issues.
I'm glad to hear that because it seemed weird enough to try out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's definitely what they were going for.
Let me know. I want to hear what you guys think on that one
Yeah.
as well when you get a chance to read it.
I'll pull it from my box to the very near future to read.
Okay. All right, Mike.
Okay, so this next one is just the first issue of, I think it's going to be an ongoing series by Mad Cave Studios, Flash Gordon #1. I haven't read any Flash Gordon. I remember watching probably one of those old movies. He's a character that's been around since, the 30s, and you just kind of know some of the supporting characters because they've been around for so long, like Ming the Merciless. Dale Arden is basically his fellow adventurer / love interest. And it might sound like I'm saying this is kind of run of the mill, but it's a really well written first issue by Jeremy Adams, and the art by Will Conrad is also excellent. It gets you into the action right away. You got Flash is being held captive after he had already saved Earth from Ming the Merciless, and now he's locked away on an alien prison planet, and he has to make his way to escape, and then only to find that Dale is maybe involved in a way that she shouldn't be in the story. I don't remember exactly because I don't have the book in front of me, and B, I just don't know enough about the characters. I'm just kind of, I'm going by memory. It just doesn't, I don't want to say for sure. I don't want to spoil anything, even if I did know. So, no, so far I would recommend continuing to read this. I don't know if I'll buy a trade with this later. I could do that. I didn't order any subsequent issues, but it's well recommended by me.
Is that part of that Defenders of the Earth series where it has all the various characters? Yep. Okay. But you don't see any of those other characters in
Not
that
in
issue?
this issue, no. I've got the Defenders of the Earth comic, or maybe it's a trade. I've got, with was it the Phantom? And
there's a magical character and
Mandrake the Magician.
Mandrake, yeah.
Gosh,
Mandrake.
It's a lot of those.
Yeah. So there's
pulp heroes, pulp science fiction, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Shad, you got one more?
If my internet cooperates, I do have one more that I was just going to tease.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of reading the entire Anne Bonny series, which came out from Blue Juice kind of over the last 5, maybe even longer years. It's a 14-issue series, and I am 2 volumes in and just about to start the 3rd. So I will give more of a review the next time we do what we've been reading.
All right. So we had planned to do some trivia here, but it sounds like we might need to skip that just because of some potential internet issues, and it may be tough for Mike and I to kind of hear those questions. So I think we want to go ahead and jump on into a CLZ Shake.
Sounds good.
All right. So if anybody has their app ready, you can go ahead and start. I just got mine open, so I'll go ahead and shake and see what I get here.
Shake.
Oh, okay. Big surprise. I almost want to shake again, but I won't. I think I did that last time, and I think I was scolded for doing so. So I once again have a issue of Star Wars. This is issue number 65, written by Walt Simonson, art by Thomas Palmer Sr. So it's got Princess Leia on the cover. I have no idea if I've read this book or not. It's in my collection, one, because it's Star Wars. I have the entire 107 issue run of Star Wars in my collection. So whenever you only have about 1,200 comics, 1 out of 12 when we shake, it's going to be a Star Wars book. So it's kind of like ROM and Micronauts. So it's a very common shake for me. I guess I should either increase the size of my collection, or just from now on, anytime I get ROM, Micronauts, Star Wars, or Silver Surfer, just shake again, because those are extended runs in my collection that account for 25 to 40% of my entire, what I consider my personal collection. So I also have this book, by the way, in hardcover, because there's a couple of really, really nice omnibus, and I think the second omnibus also has this comic book in it, so I have it not once but twice.
Okay, I'm ready.
Mike?
Ooh, let's see here.
Justice League.
Justice League. Kind of like you. That's a greater chance of there being a Justice League. This is one of those, when they featured a villain for the book, this one was Lobo. It was one of those, I think, issues that it was issue number 23.2, and it featured Lobo with if I'm not mistaken, it had one of those crazy overlay covers. It was the New 52 version of the Justice League. Not my favorite. I bought it because, well, that's the compulsions that I have had for decades now. So I can't tell you what happened in this book, not because I didn't read it, but because I probably didn't care. And yeah, so there you have it.
That was that month where they had like all villain takeovers
was,
of all the titles. They put the dot
yes,
issues. And,
annoying as heck.
Mm-hmm.
It was written by,
Yes.
Marguerite Bennett was the writer. She's a good writer, and the artist is Cliff Richards. I don't know if I know Cliff Richards, but anyway, that's the one I picked from back in 2013.
All right, Shad.
Let's see. All right, I've got Gargoyles, number 12. The most recent run of Gargoyles. This is the final issue of the title Gargoyles before they went off on Quest and all that other stuff. Written by Greg Weisman, who I didn't know how much I liked Greg Weisman's writing until he started writing the Gargoyles series. He was the original writer of Gargoyles of the show. And then artist is George Kimbadais. I don't know how to say his last name. But the series closed really well. I think that it suffered by them starting over with a number 1 instead of just starting with 13 and going on. I know that that's generally a complaint. I'm not preaching anything that isn't a normal concern of anything. But because I don't think there's much gargoyles going on right now. I haven't seen it in previews in many months at this point. But it was a solid run.
I always liked it when they did the TV tie-ins that they called them seasons.
Yeah.
So they have however many TV seasons there were, and then they could take the original Marvel run and say that was the next season.
Exactly.
So this could be season
Yes.
3 or 5. At least if you're going to renumber it, I think that makes more sense.
Right, that makes sense. Absolutely.
But that's just me. That's just me for a TV
like that,
show.
yeah.
So, all right. So, Shad, what do we have coming up on episode 194?
We are going
of the Campus
We're going to be covering the next phase, pre-orders, previews, all the catalogs next time.
All right. And Mike, if somebody wanted to reach out to you besides podcasts@birdcomics.com, how could they do that?
You could email me at mike@comicshoproadshow.com, or you can hit me up on X at MikeAtchison5, or on our Campus Comics Cast Facebook page. We do get some comments in there. I think next episode we might. There's a few that I wanted to bring up maybe next episode on our first 5 of Cassandra Nova. So we'll do that next time.
All right. And anything going on with the roadshow?
Yes, I've got an episode ready to come out. I've got to actually. Well, it's ready to come out. It's just got to be sent to the publisher to put out. Then I've got a recording set for tomorrow, and so there'll probably be 2 coming out almost back to back. So I don't know that I've given the names. I don't want to do that because I'll probably get it out of order. So there will be some road shows coming soon.
All right, good deal. Shad, what about you?
You can find all my stuff at shadschubert.com. That's SHAAD SCHUBERT.com, with links to band pages, social medias, and all that good stuff.
Got any shows coming
we're
up?
Actually, on a little bit of a break. We're learning some songs to play for my sister's wedding. So there is a Shad and Thomas show coming up at the end of October, but it is invite only.
Invite only. Okay, so I guess if you can find somebody to be
That's
there plus
right.
ones,
Exactly.
then you can sit. But you still have your releases on Spotify. Is that correct?
The new EP, More of Us, is on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, all that good stuff.
And I listened to every one of those songs.
Oh, awesome!
It was
cool.
Yes, I listened to them when I was driving back from Murfreesboro, I believe, that day. So, good stuff. There was a couple I really liked. I liked the lyrics as well.
Awesome, thank you.
And my music listening is like my comic book reading. I'm way far behind. I haven't actually listened to music in quite a while in the car, so I have not listened to it yet. I apologize. Right. And I'm Scott Reed. You can find me at burgcomics.com, BURG comics.com, which will have links to Facebook, social media, my eBay store, and we'll be back soon. Episode 94.
I'm usually wrong on name pronunciations. So. And I don't know which is right, but I say Zatanna, not Zatanna. Zatanna? I say Zatanna. I think I probably say both. I've heard it both ways. I noticed today I was writing capital E's today, and I wrote them 3 different ways in the same sentence. I did the square, and then I did the curls one, and then I did the circle and put the line in the middle, all in the same sentence. I mean, it was just like, oh my gosh. So there's no telling with me. I'll say, yeah, I know. It's like I realized it after I'd already finished. It's like, wow, what am I doing here? So, but yeah, no, I don't say Zatanna. Yeah, you said Zatanna earlier. Did I say Zatanna? Okay, I think Zatanna is actually probably better. I don't know that there's a right way. It's not like she's a real person. It's like Raj Al Ghul or Ra's al Ghul or whatever. Yeah.